All right, Brandon, you ready? Week 6, here we go. Friday Learning Series. This has been a lot of fun. I've been really enjoying all the conversations and the dialogue we've been having about this, and hope that you're having some conversations. Whether you agree or disagree, it's all going to move us forward. So continue to push that needle, continue to have the conversations, those critical conversations, those crucial conversations. Every time we talk about this, it just benefits kids. Whether you fully buy in or whether or not you're a little bit resistant, it's all good. Honestly, we're all on the same team. We're all going for the same thing. So continue to think, continue to grow, continue to research. If you're looking for other evidence other than Schmittou, I'll just give you some names real quick. Look up Stiggins, look up Wiggins, look up Wormelli, look up Hattie, look up visible learning, look up universal design theory, look up begin with the end in mind. There's a lot of stuff out there you can just Google, find lots of research and supporting ideas. You can also find some things if you just Google. You can find some anecdotal responses where people push back a little bit in their own classrooms, and that's fine too. Feel free to read through that so you can analyze and synthesize. Ultimately, I'm not looking for you to follow the script, like I said. That defeats everything we're talking about. We're looking for teachers to own the power and to understand that they have control. So keep on thinking, keep on growing. So a quick recap again. This is week 6, so if you're just jumping in, I encourage you to go back and watch the other videos, or at least talk to somebody about the concepts in the other videos. So all of this makes a lot of sense to you. We've talked about mean, median, mode. We've talked about preponderance of evidence. We talked tic-tac-toe board, 3 in a row. We talked power standards. We talked about depth of knowledge. We talked about rubrics. Now today we're going to talk about, so what does assessment actually look like? And does assessment always have to mean test or big project? The answer is no, no, no. A couple things I'm going to try to dispel. Again, I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again. Let me erase the work from last week. So formative and summative assessment. Pre-test, post-test, those ideas. So here in America, we rely on the easy button. Staples actually made an entire advertising campaign about the easy button. We've got fast food restaurants. We've got drive-up delivery of our groceries. We like things that are quick, easy, and convenient. But that doesn't always mean it's best. Sometimes sitting at a restaurant and enjoying a 4-course meal that's going to cost you an arm and a leg is actually what we need. We need sometimes to invest a little bit more. There's a reason Whole Foods charges more for their groceries than Walmart does. Quality matters. So we're not looking to just do things quick and easy. I was at a conference a while ago, and they made the statement that Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy is the most quoted research in education, but it's also the least known. A lot of people start to talk about Bloom's taxonomy, but very few people have actually read Bloom's taxonomy, which I think is spot on true. The same thing is true with John Hattie's research. It was a meta-analysis of more than 50,000 studies, and yet people often just look at those graphics and say, oh, I'm going to latch on because I'm going to look at the graphic, as opposed to really reading what the research says. So I'm going to challenge you, don't just take the quick and easy, actually read it. The idea of formative and summative assessment is a prime example. For the last decade or so, we've been talking formative and summative assessment, and people have latched on to the idea that those are two separate things. Like you can just throw a label on an assessment and say, this one's formative, so it's not going to count that much. This one's summative, so it really matters. My own kids at their school, in their weighting of their grades, they actually have a formative assessment category and a summative assessment category. And I pushed back because I'm that parent. So I'm going to challenge you right now to understand that all assessment is formative and all assessment is summative. So here was the question I asked. So in my student's grade book, my older son, he's in middle school, there is a category that said formative assessment, and he has perfect scores on all his formative assessments. So I asked the teacher, does this mean that you did not have to make any changes in your instruction as a result of his perfect understanding? And the teacher says, well, yeah, pretty much, but his summative scores are a little bit lower. So I asked the question, well, if his formative scores are high and his summative scores are low, why is there a disconnect? And her response was, I don't put as much weight in the formative ones. They don't really mean that as much to me. So I said, so you made instructional decisions based off of evidence that you already knew was flawed and not as strong, and it wasn't as valid? She kind of got taken aback. And I know my question was harsh, but it's a great question to ask. If we're saying our formative assessments don't really matter and shouldn't really count, yet those are the things we're basing our instructional decisions on, then we're kind of setting ourselves up, aren't we? A summative assessment, in turn, should be one where students are able to demonstrate their mastery. But I asked the question, so my son doesn't show mastery on the summative assessments, are you going to improve your instruction and do something different? She said, well, no, at the end of a summative assessment, we really have to move on. It's really the summation and collection of evidence. So I said, well, I don't understand. If he doesn't understand it, why would you not go back and reteach it? Isn't that what teaching is all about? Because you're willing to do it for formative assessments that you don't put stock in, but you're not willing to do it for summative assessments. So I caution you real quickly with that little story, because all assessments are formative and summative. It's up to us to determine how we're going to use it. Are we going to use it summatively to say, yep, I captured it all, I've got that tic-tac-toe board 3 in a row, I can move on? Or are we looking at it formatively, meaning we're going to change our instruction? Even the M-STEP, SAT, PSAT are formative and summative, which is why at the beginning of the school year, in your student data meetings, you spend a lot of time looking at that stuff, saying, what do we need to do to adjust our instruction? That's formatively looking at the assessment. It's also summative because we're capturing it as solid evidence. In our classrooms, we need to get to the place where we're looking at all evidence as formative and summative, that we're looking at it saying, this is quality. If it's not quality, don't use it as evidence. I used the example in one of our earlier videos about the court of law. Sometimes there's circumstantial evidence. It's evidence that we can look at and say, this is kind of interesting. It makes me think, but it's not admissible in the court of law. It's not quality evidence. Same thing happens in classrooms. You know, maybe you're sitting down in a circle time or on the carpet and ask the students a question. You get 1 or 2 responses, but not answers from everybody. That's kind of circumstantial. You can kind of get a gauge, the thumbs up, the thumbs down, the exit tickets. You can kind of get a gauge for student learning, but it's not quality evidence that you would use to document guilt or innocence, got it, don't got it, proficient, not proficient, A, B, 3 or 4 on scales. Totally appropriate. The evidence that we collect, though, that we're going to use to document learning and to inform our practice needs to be quality. Got it? So there's a lot of ways you can do it. The rubric, I've heard people say to me, those rubrics work out great if you're doing a lot of projects or big writing assignments. But what if you are just doing math questions and you've got 10 questions to give students for homework or in class, or science, and they truly do have to just memorize some elements and something from the periodic table or some laws of physics? Cool. There's ways you can do this as well, and that's what I want to talk about today. And the rubrics still fit. So again, what I'm giving you today, not a script. I'm planting seeds. You can take this back to your departments, your grade levels, and figure out ways to make it work for you. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to combine traditional, or the way that a lot of us have always done things, with what might fit in the greater context of things. And I call this cycled assessment. Cycled assessment. And here's the basic concept. So let's assume that you teach Monday through Thursday, and every Friday you give a quiz thing. Or maybe it's every other week, or maybe it's once a month you give a quiz or a test. However it works for you, not going to fight that right now. Let's just assume that every single week your quiz is 10 questions long, okay? Here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. So let's say you have a 10-question quiz. It's front and back. And you write 6 questions on the front. On the back, you have your last 4 questions, or maybe it's the second sheet of paper. Here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. Not only are we going to dispel the idea of formative and summative being 2 separate things, we're going to dispel the idea of pre-test and post-test being 2 different things. The idea is when a kid shows you they know it, don't make them continue to jump through hoops. Likewise, if a kid doesn't show you that they know it, continue to teach and reteach. The idea is to teach for endurance, make sure it's lasting, make sure there's mastery. Mastery means it's not just a one and done. So here's what I would challenge you to do. So you have a 10-question quiz. Again, sample, I'm not telling you quizzes have to be 10 questions long, just an example, okay? On your 10-question quiz, on the front we got 6 questions. Here's my challenge. Make these 6 questions all based off of the standard that's being covered right now. Whether you already covered it, like you just covered it, you taught Monday through Thursday, and you're giving this quiz on Friday to test all that, or maybe it's the stuff that you're getting ready to launch into. Maybe it's in the middle, whenever you're giving it. So 6 questions based off of the current standard. The back of the page, or the second page, I'm gonna ask that you give 2 questions based off of prior learning, and 2 questions based off of future learning. Now here's how this works. So you got 6 questions based off of where you currently are, 2 based off of the past, and 2 based off of the future. Now, I'm doing this just in the sequential way. You have 6 in a row and 2 and 2. You can mix them up however you want to. But here's what this is gonna help you do. Number 1, it's gonna help you determine quality evidence. You might have 6 questions all based off of the same standard. And you might just be looking to see if a kid can get 3 of them in a row, hence tic-tac-toe board, on a paper pencil test, and then they're done. You might simply tell the kid, I don't care which of these you answer, but I'm looking to see if you get 3 of them in a row correct. When you get 3 of them in a row correct, boom, you've got it. Maybe they get questions 4, 5, and 6 correct. Maybe they get questions 3, 4, 5 correct. Maybe it's 1, 2, 3. When they get 3 in a row correct, you're done grading. You don't have to keep grading because they've demonstrated mastery. That works. You also want to go back and look at prior learnings so you can see if there really is endurance, if they've held on to the evidence. For this one, maybe you want them to get both of these questions correct. If not, you know you have to circle back to a topic and bring it back into the conversation. Maybe you're just looking to see if your class average on these is 80% or greater. The power of 80 is something I mentioned earlier on. If we can try to get 80% of our kids mastering 80% of the standards, we're going to be killing it. So maybe you're looking to see if 80% of the kids still retain this knowledge. Likewise, you're looking to see the future. This is your pre-test, so you can determine where you're starting on your rubric. What I would do is I would have maybe one question focused on that level 3 skill and one question focused on that level 2 skill. You want to determine what level of mastery your kids are starting at so that you determine where you're starting your instruction. This is a pretty cool format. It helps you spiral and cycle your assessment. It helps spiral and cycle your instruction all year long. Again, it also fits within the rubrics, fits with the preponderance of evidence, fits with the tic-tac-toe board, fits with power science. It all fits together. So I'm giving you a lot to think about right now, a lot to really wrestle with. Assessment leads to instruction. Instruction is where the magic happens, but they're two connected things. They're coupled together. You can't have good instruction without good assessment. You can't have good assessment without good instruction. All right, enjoy that, wrestle with it, talk about it. I'm here if you have any questions.